Hi everyone, this is Pam from Crafty Kiwi Mama. Welcome to my channel. Today I would like to show you how I use one card design to make 3 cards by using 3 different techniques. You can see in this video that I have made a lot of mistakes. I'm using different cardstocks to cut out the rose die. I especially like this golden rose. It gives a very arrogant look, don't you think? The first technique that I will be using is the stained glass technique. This is the card that I make the most mistakes, and I will also point out my mistakes and how I fix them in this video. All the 3 cards have 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 card base. For this first card, I also have a smaller note card about 4 by 4 inside the card base. The purpose of this note card is because this is a see-through card, and so when we write our message inside the card, we won't see it from the front of the card. 1 acetate and 2 4 by 4 craft color cardstocks. This is a mistake as I forgot a second layer card in between the craft color cardstocks and the card base, and you will see it at the end of the card number 1. I also used the golden cardstock from Dollarama to cut out the rose. I used the rose die to cut 2 craft color cardstocks, 1 golden cardstock, and the front of the card base. I make sure all cardstocks are cut at the same spot. The negative space will be the card itself. I used the rose die cut as a guide to color on the acetate. I taped the acetate over the guide. I use alcohol markers to color the open area of the die cut. Instead of coloring the acetate, I tap the color onto the acetate. Make sure you choose a darker color because once you color it on acetate, the color tends to become lighter. While I wait for the color on the acetate to dry, I work on the sentiment. I use golden embossing powder for the sentiment to match the golden outline of the rose. I use the negative space cardstock as a guide to adhere the rose onto the acetate. Stack 2 layers of craft color cardstocks as well as the golden rose die cut onto the front of the card. Now I also use the white rose to adhere the inside of the card to have a cleaner look. Then I adhere the note card inside the card. Lastly, I use the glossy accent to fill in the rose to make it more like a stained glass. Now I thought my first card is done. Then I realized that I did not include the golden cardstock as the second panel. So I add a golden frame to the card instead. Then I see the sentiment is too low. I should have stopped from here. Then I saw some dirt on the right bottom corner of the golden frame, and so I used baby wipes to clean it, and the gold paint was being wiped off. Unfortunately, I ran out of the big golden cardstock, and so I have to cut out 4 small strips and adhere to the top of the existing frame. I didn't cut out the correct length, and there is some space between the 2 strips. So I have to add a few sequins to cover the gaps. And my dad likes flowers and gold and red colors. I'm planning to give this card to my dad anyway, so I am Happy Father's Day in between the rose and the sentiments so that the card looks more proportional. Now this is the completed card number 1. Let's move on to card number 2. This card is a lot easier than the first one. I used the rose die cut as stencil to make this card. As planned, this card contains 3 layers. The first panel is a white cardstock with 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. The second panel is 4 by 4 and the card base is 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. I will have the pink and the yellow ink as the panel of the rose and the green as the leaves. It will be easier if you have a masking paper to stick the stencil onto the cardstock. I don't have one, and so I will need to be very careful not to let the stencil move. I used the sponge topper to blend the ink onto the stencil. You will need to make sure that you blend the ink outside of the stencil. This way you can see the outline of the whole rose. I would like the leaves to be green, and so I decided to use the remaining green ink on the sponge topper to blend in the leaves. After the blending is done, I'm going to use my stamping tool to stamp the sentiment. The sentiment that I will be using is Just For You, which is different from the first card. I'm just using a regular black ink for the sentiment. I think even the stencil is very pretty, and so I can save this for my next project. Now I can assemble my card, and it's now called this card completed. For card number 3, I'm using the pattern paper that I bought from Winners. There are so many beautiful pattern papers from this set. I'm using the same golden cardstock that I used for the first card. The main reason for me to use the pink pattern paper is its golden lines, which matches perfectly with the golden cardstock. Off screen, I've adhered the pattern paper to the cardstock as well as the white panel on the front. The next step is to adhere the golden rose. I'm using the gold embossing powder again for the sentiment. I forgot to apply the anti-static powder before using the embossing powder, and so there are a lot of extra embossing powder stick on the card. This is another mistake I've made. I use a brush to brush off the extra embossing powder. This will finish off card number 3. Now that all cards have completed, here is the final look at the card for today. I hope this video gets you some inspiration of making some cards. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoy it and hope to see you next time. Have a great one.